This page is the front cover of Total 64, proudly proclaiming itself the #1 best-selling unofficial N64 magazine. They're kicking things off with a first review of Mortal Kombat 4, promising all the gore and more. Exactly what we wanted, eh? They're also hyping up Gex 64 as the latest platform superstar, which sounds promising. Right there on the cover you've got a big render of a character from Mortal Kombat, looking rather imposing in blue and yellow, and a cracking circular screenshot highlighting the review of Mission Impossible, boldly labeled, the year's biggest spy game reviewed. High stakes that. Also crammed into this issue are previews and reviews of titles like Earthbound 64, Battle Tanks, Virtual Pool, Top Gear Overdrive, and Gomon 2. Plus previews for the likes of Wipeout 64 and Hybrid Heaven are also featured. Looks like they've covered a decent spread of upcoming and recent releases. Definitely worth a read for any self-respecting N64 enthusiast. This page is a full-page advert for Department 1, a retailer offering new and second-hand N64 games, hardware and accessories, including imports. They feature console bundles, the N64 passport converter, and a repair service. This page advertises Exchange, featuring new and used US/UK software for N64 and more, plus DVD players, Dreamcast, Game Boy, trade-ins, and contact info. This page is the contents page, giving us a rundown of what's inside issue 18. Looks like they've got a feature diving into the enduring legacy of the Game Boy, complete with a picture of the trusty old handheld. On the preview front, we're getting a look at Gex 64, featuring that ever-smooth talking gecko chap looking rather dapper. The 64mation section covers Hybrid Heaven, Wipeout 64 bringing its futuristic racing goodness to the N64, and SCARS, which sounds intriguing, promising some sort of beach buggy animal hybrid chaos. Finally, they're wrapping up the guide for Forsaken with Part 2, which is handy for anyone who got stuck last month. All laid out with little circular snapshots from the games or topics. This page lays out the contents of issue 18, getting straight to the point with a big, bold title. On the review front, we've got the highly anticipated Mission Impossible to see if it lives up to the hype, followed by Mortal Kombat 4, finally bringing some proper arcade fighting action to the N64 handy indeed. The first RPG on the console, Quest 64, gets put through its paces, featuring a chap who looks ready for adventure. Then there's BioF.EAKS, promising a month of beat-em-up bliss with jetpacks and lasers. Oh yes, Bomberman ditches his classic grid for some platforming fun in Bomberman Hero, and if you fancy a digital opponent, Virtual Chess is reviewed, complete with a board shot. Beyond the reviews, they list the usual suspects like Cheaty Monkey, the firing line, high scores, and the sign-off. Over in the editorial, it seems there's been a bit of a shake-up, with the old guard moving on, and a new double act called Lips and Tackle taking the reins, promising double the fun and dedication. The caricatures look like they mean business. N64 news focuses on Earthbound 64, Mother 3, now on cartridge instead of the 64DD. This potentially brings the game to the West, but with a reduced 256 megabit size. Despite this, an add-on disc is planned. The game is described as player reactive, featuring 10 characters and 60+ hours of gameplay. Zelda news includes a team split after Ocarina of Time, with one half developing a sequel using the Ocarina engine for speed, and the other starting fresh. Rare's Perfect Dark is speculated to have influenced this. Finally, there are images of Link, and UK release dates are mentioned. This page features news and previews for upcoming N64 titles. There's a table of contents listing games like Earthbound 64, Zelda, Winback, Gomon, Ogre Battle 3 and more. The main article introduces Winback from Koei, a third-person action game aiming to fill the void left by games like Metal Gear Solid on other consoles. The article compares it favorably to GoldenEye, and speculates it could be a strong alternative to Perfect Dark. Players control Agent Jean-Luc Cougar in stealth-focused missions involving infiltration and hostage rescue, though he's got plenty of firepower and fancy moves like sideways rolls. The preview mentions multiple environments and praises the graphics, suggesting it could be a significant import release. Screenshots show some in-game action. A side panel lists numerous upcoming N64 releases, detailing games expected in November and December 1998, as well as others listed as TBAA. Finally, Konami's Gomon is highlighted, revealing he's returning to his roots, with a new two-dimensional side-scrolling adventure. The game will feature Gomon's pals Ebisuamaru, Yaye, and Sasuke, and excitingly, will include a 2-player cooperative mode. Screenshots give a glimpse of the colorful 2D gameplay. This page gets stuck into a couple of previews and some news bits, kicking off with a look at Ogre Battle 3. Apparently Nintendo really needs these strategy RPGs, like this tentatively titled Ogre Battle 3 from Quest, to compete with the mighty Final Fantasy V2 over in Japan. The game sounds like it blends strategic map movement where you interact with people, with isometric battles featuring knights, wizards and, well, ogres. It's only set for Japan so far, but us publishers are eyeing it up. There are a few screenshots showing the battle view and the map screen. Next up, we have a preview for Virtual Pool 64, promising a realistic simulation of getting down the pub for a few frames without that dodgy bloke hassling you. It boasts realistic physics, adjustable settings, and 9 game modes, so you'll have plenty to pot. There's a screenshot of some colorful balls ready for a break. Down at the bottom there's some news. Nintendo shares took a bit of a tumble. Plus, the chunky Playmobil chaps are getting their own N64 RPG called Hype, the Time Quest. And Eidos, fresh off Tomb Raider success, are bringing the scrolling beat-em-up fighting force, which sounds like it's got some interesting ideas like picking up enemies to use as weapons. This page previews upcoming N64 games. Walking on a Knife Edge, a first-person shooter set on Mars, is highlighted, promising a unique flying blaster experience. Sony and Nintendo are reportedly partnering to distribute certain N64 titles, leveraging Sony's ownership stake in Psygnosis. A correction clarifies that Buck Bumble is published by Ubisoft and developed by Argonaut, with a promised review and Rayman 2 preview next month. The page also lists upcoming games for August and September 1998, including Mission Impossible, F1 World Grand Prix, Fighting Force 64, and Buck Bumble. This page dives into some upcoming N64 goodness, listing games expected in late '98 like the rather anticipated Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time and Extreme Egg 2. The main event here is a preview for Battle Tanks. Get this, a virus kills off most blokes, leaving the ladies to become warlords, and you settle disputes by tanking it up. Brilliant. You get to choose from various armored vehicles, customize them, and battle it out in destructible city environments. The big draw seems to be a 4-player split-screen deathmatch mode, which they claim runs at a rock-steady 20 frames per second. Sounds like absolute carnage is on the cards. It's due out next year from 3D. There's also a rather frantic-looking comic strip, featuring an evil ant, causing absolute chaos, with people running around and someone phoning the hospital about a designer in an ant costume throwing eggs. Standard stuff, really. Elsewhere, Electronic Arts has snapped up the rights to WCW Wrestling from THQ, but THQ has landed a multi-year deal to make WWF games instead. Apparently, Acclaim's next WWF game, Warzone, is their last, due out next month. On the racing front, the chaps who made Pilot Wings, Paradigms, are apparently cooking up a Grand Prix game for the N64 that's showing real promise, even at 60% completion, with smooth performance and loads of cars on screen. Fingers crossed that turns out well. This page kicks off with the game chart attack, where you can try and predict the top 5 games to win a prize. The current chart shows World Cup 98, Forsaken, and GoldenEye 007 leading the pack, with plenty of Nintendo classics still lurking in the top 20. Over in the news section, there's a rundown of games expected towards the end of '98. Looking ahead, December is set to bring Nightmare Creatures and Quake 2, among others, while the final quarter might see Star Wars, Rogue Squadron, and the potentially divine virtual Hiryu no Ken 64. Speaking of Hiryu no Ken Twin, there's a preview detailing how this fighting game sequel is splitting into 2 distinct titles, an SD version with goofy deformed fighters due this summer, and the more traditional virtual version aiming for a winter release, which is apparently the realistic fighter we've all been hoping for. It's accompanied by a slightly fuzzy screenshot showing the more serious-looking version. This page kicks off with some urgent news in the stop press section, asking the vital question, what is Banjo-Tooie? Apparently, Rare have confirmed it's the official sequel to Banjo-Kazooie, due in 1999. Intriguingly, it turns out there are areas in the first game you simply couldn't access without first getting your hands on the sequel, suggesting a clever link between the two. How this will work is still up in the air, possibly via the 64DD, or maybe even a sneaky Kart adapter, but the potential is rather exciting. The article reckons Banjo-Kazooie could well surpass the original, which was already a superb game. Further down there's news for the patrolheads in the Get Yourself in Gear section. Snowblind are working on Top Gear Overdrive, the follow-up to Top Gear Rally. It's promising enhanced graphics, a more arcade feel, and features like shortcut heavy tracks, interactive environments you can mess with, and even a cache system to upgrade your motor. Plus, it's adding a 4-player split-screen mode, which is a significant improvement over the previous game's multiplayer. The magazine hopes this racer could finally claim the title of Best Driving Game on the N64. This page dives headfirst into the exciting world of N64 peripherals and accessories. First up is the Dex drive, aiming to solve that age-old problem of running out of space on your memory card after epic sessions on games like Forsaken or Turok. This little gadget lets you hook your N64 memory card up to your PC, allowing you to store countless saves on your hard drive and even get cheats or updates online. Rather handy, that data. Next, we're treated to a look at the Vortex 3D control system, a rather intriguing new joystick that might just shake things up. It sits on a metal base, and you actually tilt the whole thing to move your character, like a giant analog stick, or even rotate it for a steering wheel effect. You can also detach the main pad for more conventional play. It's packed with buttons, auto-fire, slow motion, and even has a memory card slot and rumble built-in. Definitely one to keep an eye on for a full review. GK. Finally, Gamester is getting in on the act with a new range of N64 joypads. They've remodeled the standard pad for better comfort and control, adding features like independent turbo fire and slow motion switches. Best of all, they're coming in different colors and look set to be significantly cheaper than Nintendo's official pads. A competitive price point is always welcome, so hopefully, these pads deliver on performance too. Hybrid Heaven, Konami's new 3D polygonal game, is generating significant buzz for its originality. Combining adventure, action, and role-playing elements, it retains traditional RPG features like menu-driven choices. A key innovation is its in-scene combat, featuring dynamic camera angles during turn-based battles. The game's visual style blends futuristic and Aztec influences, as demonstrated by character models in armor and fighting sequences. Published by Konami and developed in-house, the game is expected to release on cartridge, with a TBA date. Here's the science bit. Section hints at deeper thematic or technical details. This page gives us another look at Hybrid Heaven, with a massive Heaven title taking up the top of the page. We've got a few screenshots here showing off some rather chunky character models and combat scenes, like one guy fighting what looks like a giant grey teddy bear, and another character looking rather dynamic while shooting. The text jumps into what the game is actually about, painting a picture of a grim future where humanity's gone downhill and science is out of control. Our hero, Johnny Spader, has to navigate this mess, fighting off enemies and figuring out why the president has been nabbed by some unknown group. Apparently, this leads Johnny into a plot involving government blackmail and dodgy deeds. The game's described as taking place in dank, hostile environments, and the enemies are mutant genetic freaks who get more twisted as you go along. It sounds like Spader learns new fighting moves as he progresses, so you're constantly upgrading your character. The reviewer seems pretty hyped about it, suggesting it could be a blinder of a game, but throws in the classic British moan about us poor sods in the West potentially not getting our hands on it until Christmas. Looks like T64 are well up for it though. This page blasts us with the bright yellow title for Wipeout 64, plastered across the screen with a couple of sharp-looking ships from the game tearing across the background. There's a small screenshot showing some in-game action, complete with track details and player stats, looking like the usual high-speed anti-gravity racing chaos we've come to expect from the series. Below the main image, there's a handy little info box titled The Lowdown, giving us the essentials. It tells us Psygnosis are publishing this bad boy, with development handled in-house. And if you're marking your calendars, the expected release date is Q4 98, coming to you on a cartridge. Naturally. Looks like the N64 is getting a dose of futuristic speed. This page doubles down on the Wipeout 64 hype, featuring a massive N64 graphic and showcasing screenshots of the game in action. It delves into the history of racing games, highlighting how titles like Mario Kart introduced tactical elements before praising the PlayStation Wipeout series, particularly Wipeout 2097, as a genuine classic that pushed the genre forward. The article excitedly talks about Wipeout 64, continuing the futuristic, anti-gravity racing tradition with its hovercraft-style vehicles, drawing parallels to Nintendo's own F-Zero X. It fondly remembers the PlayStation version's legendary soundtrack, featuring big names like The Prodigy, Future Sound of London and Fluke, expressing hope the N64 version will live up to that high standard. Psygnosis are clearly confident the audio will be top-notch. Looking at the game itself, Wipeout 64 is set to deliver with 6 new tracks, 5 new weapons, and potentially up to 15 vehicles racing at once, which is a solid number indeed. The prospect of a smooth 4-player mode is also mentioned as a key factor. Overall, the tone suggests this could well be one of the essential racing titles for 1998. Expect a full report on its progress soon. This page introduces us to a new racer on the N64 horizon, STSE.ARS, which stands for Supercomputer Animal Racing Simulation. Ubisoft is publishing this one, developed by Vivid Image, and it looks set to continue the N64's strong showing in the racing genre, following up on the likes of Wipeout 64 we just saw. Neat. The game promises a blend of elements from various titles, combining speed, weapons, and four-player action, much like a futuristic Mario Kart or Diddy Kong Racing, but with a rather unique premise. The backstory involves intelligent computers overthrowing their human masters, and then, rather bizarrely, deciding to race animal-themed cars against each other for entertainment. It's a bonkers setup, but certainly grabs your attention. Warrington Masters. Based on the early look and screenshots, the graphical effects appear to be top-notch, with the texture work, particularly on snow, singled out for praise. It seems SSC.ARS is shaping up to be another strong contender for N64 owners looking for some high-speed, weapon-heavy racing fun. We'll have to wait for a release date, but it sounds promising. This page dives deeper into the S.C.ARS action, showing off some slick screenshots and getting into the nitty-gritty of the gameplay. It sounds like the game ramps up the difficulty and madness compared to early versions, with faster cars and crazier tracks. The reviewer reckons the graphics are looking rather good, apparently reminiscent of Wipeout, which is high praise indeed. They seem impressed with how Vivid Image is handling the polygon count and keeping a solid frame rate, even with multiple cars bombing around. We also learn about the weapons system, which thankfully steers clear of the usual bananas and turtle shells. So no throwing red hoops then. Instead, we get a look at a bunch of more original-sounding power-ups, under the rather dramatic heading, Feel the Power. You've got everything from turbos for a speed boost, seekers that hunt down opponents, and even a time bomb that sounds like a hot potato of destruction you need to pass on. There's also talk of a four-player mode, which is always welcome, and various game modes like Grand Prix Cups and Custom Cups to keep you busy. It sounds like SC.ARS is packing quite a punch. This page dives into the rather splendid lineup of vehicles on offer in SC.ARS, revealing the game's full title, Supercomputer Animal Racing System. Clever, eh? We're told there are 9 cars based on various creatures you can choose from. A cheetah, cobra, lion, mammoth, mantis, panther, rhino, scorpion, and a shark. The page then shows off the designs for some of these beastly rides. The mantis car looks a bit flimsy, but is meant to be speedy, with claws that might also be weapons. The rhino car is presented as a powerful, heavy machine, with a rather prominent horn. The mammoth car sounds like another tough contender, offering plenty of battering fun with those tusks. The lion car is hyped as the king of the road, promising to leave opponents in a wreck. Finally, the shark car is described as predatory and sneaky, ready to savage the competition. We also get a look at the logos for the cheetah, cobra, scorpion and panther, completing the Animal Kingdom roster. It seems Vivid Image certainly got creative with these designs. This page continues our look at ST.ARS, diving into the game's modes and tracks. We learn about the standard cup mode, where you must win races to progress and unlock the mirror mode, effectively doubling the track count to a rather impressive 54. There's also a one-player challenge mode, which unlocks new cars perfect for greedy collectors. Time Attack, or Ghost Mode as it's rightly called, offers the classic chance to race against your best time, just like Mario Kart, helping shave off those precious seconds. The 9 race zones are detailed, each sounding distinct. Aztec features changing road surfaces, water has underwater sections and weapons galore, while mountain throws mutant aliens and off-road surfaces at you. Island is described as a speedy paradise like Cooper Beach, ski zones promise slippery slopes and gorgeous lighting, and Blade is a claustrophobic industrial city with sharp 90-degree turns requiring extreme skill. Rally is a twisty country road testing your brake and handbrake skills, and Canyon features varied standard routes with potential shortcuts. Finally, the secret track zone is reserved for masters, only becoming available once you've truly conquered the game. Seems like plenty of variety to keep you busy in S.C.ARS. The next page dives straight into a preview for the upcoming Gex 64. We're introduced to the premise, the multimedia dimension is under threat from the villainous Rez, and the hero needed is none other than Gex, the wisecracking gecko himself. The magazine questions what the N64 truly needs, suggesting another platformer might seem odd, but argues that Gex is different, a multi-system veteran with that certain je ne sais quoi that makes his games worth paying attention to. Having conquered the PlayStation, Gex is making his move to the N64, promising extra levels and hidden areas not found in previous versions. One notable addition mentioned is an underwater level set around the wreck of the Titanic. The preview highlights the variety in the game's TV-themed worlds, ranging from cartoons to kung fu, with Gex adapting his appearance and moves accordingly, even busting out the crane from the Karate Kid. Screenshots show Gex in different environments, including being chased by a large taxi beast and standing near some delightfully unhelpful signposts, which are apparently as useful as those in Bristol. Seems like Gex is bringing his trademark attitude and diverse levels to the N64. This page continues the deep dive into the upcoming Gex 64, featuring a massive, rather imposing image of Gex himself decked out in a suave suit, looking suspiciously like he's about to take over the telly with a remote control in hand. Lol, the text picks up where the last page left off, declaring you're strong with the Gex, and promising that if you've seen the PlayStation version you know the crack. The 64-bit version is instantly recognizable but apparently improved. No surprises there, eh? They're saying Gex is a slick 3D platformer. That's very much in the Mario 64 mold. High praise indeed, especially as the PlayStation version was apparently hailed as a Mario beater. Hopes are high for the N64 version then. Part 2. The freedom of movement is highlighted, noting Gex can run in any direction, fast or slow, and get this, he uses his suckered feet to scale walls and ceilings. Handy that. This apparently makes the gaming possibilities huge. There's a small screenshot showing a rather grubby character, and some weird yellow things, accompanied by the caption, "It ain't over till the fat lady sings," or lands on your head. Charming. Finally, there's a lowdown box stating the publisher is GT Interactive, the developer is Real-Time Associates, the expected release date is Sept 98, and the format is cartridge. Looks like Gex is bringing his A-game, and some serious flexibility to the N64. Gex 64, detailed on the next page, boasts enhanced abilities beyond the tail whip, including tongue-based movement and leaps. The N64 version's graphics are praised for smoothness and handling of the console's capabilities, with improved visuals and seemingly resolved fogging issues. Levels vary greatly, from prehistoric settings to futuristic neon environments. Progression relies on collecting remote controls, scattered throughout levels and hidden areas, which unlock further content. The game's structure suggests significant replayability. Screenshots showcase diverse environments, including water levels, grassy plains, and snowy areas. The overall impression is of a visually appealing and engaging experience. The next page features the ever-suave Gex, the gecko looking sharp in his tuxedo, ready to conquer the N64. We're treated to a few glimpses of the game, showing Gex in a colourful field getting some flower power, a slightly disturbing shot of him apparently messing with a pink bunny, and the hazards of the deep, with a rather peckish shark looking for a gecko snack. We also see Gex getting about via turtle taxi, which sounds rather luxurious. The text gives us a little 3Do history lesson, recounting Gex's origins on the ill-fated 3Do, and his subsequent success on the PlayStation and Saturn, highlighting him as a plucky survivor of the console wars. It seems the N64 version is aiming to keep all the character and wit that Gex is known for, though there's a bit of concern that the legendary Leslie Phillips might not be reprising his role for this cartridge-based outing, which would be a shame. Overall, it sounds like Gex is bringing his trademark sass and attitude from the PlayStation to the N64. This page delves into the enduring legacy of the Nintendo Game Boy, arguably the most popular handheld gaming device ever created. It's a testament to its staying power, as the article highlights its dominance in the market, still holding around an 80% share years after its debut. The piece tracks the Game Boy's journey from the early days of handhelds like the Game & Watch, noting how Nintendo paved the way for its legendary device back in 1989. The text talks about the original grey and purple design sticking around for ages, leading to the eventual release of the sleek Game Boy Pocket. We get a glimpse of the games that kept players hooked, with screenshots showing a football game, what looks like an RPG or shop interface, a platformer set in a toy store, and even the Mulan movie tie-in game. The Game Boy camera also makes an appearance, proving Nintendo was always keen on expanding what the device could do. It seems the Game Boy wasn't just a console, but a phenomenon that survived against all odds. This page declares the Game Boy the undeniable king, hammering home its enduring reign in the handheld market. The article continues its analysis, delving into the secret of success, and pondering just why Nintendo's simple design kept selling like hotcakes, even as competitors faded away. Maybe it's the sheer coolness factor of owning one. Worry. We see a collection of the trusty handhelds themselves, showing off a few different colors. There are several screenshots from football games, including a tactical view, proving the Game Boy wasn't just for puzzle addicts and platform fans. But the real stars here are the glimpses of some classic games. The box art for Mystical Ninja starring Goemon makes a grand appearance, promising some proper adventuring. And then there's the absolute phenomenon taking over, Pokémon. Bulbasaur and Pikachu are plastered across the bottom, with text highlighting the impending craze that started in Japan and is now hitting the States, warning us Brits to keep our eyes peeled. Seems like the Game Boy was just getting started on its world domination, thanks to those little pocket monsters. This page continues the deep dive into the Game Boy phenomenon, shifting focus to the new, slimmer model, the Game Boy Pocket. The article posits that the original success wasn't down to flashy graphics, far from it with that monochromatic display, but sheer, unadulterated playability. We're treated to the box art for International Superstar Soccer, highlighting the breadth of genres available on the system. Below, a few game screenshots show off some classic handheld adventures, including a Mickey Mouse title and Mulan. The big news is the Game Boy Pocket itself. It's smaller, and comes in a rainbow of colors like red, yellow and clear, though the screen size stays the same. Crucially, Nintendo blessed it with backward compatibility. This means all those games you've already sunk countless hours into on the original grey brick will work perfectly on the sleek new Pocket. Your cherished collection? Totally safe and ready to grow. There's even a funny tale about the editor's slightly unhinged reaction to getting the new Pocket, suggesting its arrival caused a bit of office chaos. Seems like the Game Boy, even in its refined form, remained an irresistible force. This page delves deeper into the Game Boy Pocket, revealing Nintendo's rather surprising digital camera add-on. It seems the revolution is not just about gaming anymore, but also about capturing blurry, monochrome images. See ha! The article introduces the Game Boy camera, a fisheye lens that attaches to the top of the Pocket, allowing you to snap photos. You can apparently store up to 30 images in a built-in album. There's even a rather unsettling screenshot showing a kid with a wide, slightly creepy smile captured by the device. The fun doesn't stop there, as you can jazz up your pictures with comical add-ons like big ears and mustaches. Or use special lenses like mirror image or split screen. You can even create animations or print the photos onto sticky back paper. Frankly, it sounds like hours of bizarre entertainment, as the editor found out, much to the likely annoyance of his colleagues. Elsewhere, we see the box art for Mickey Mouse Magic Wands, and a screenshot from a top-down dungeon crawler game. The piece concludes by pondering the future of the Game Boy Pocket, especially with the upcoming color version, and the ability to link to the Nintendo 64 via the game's booster. The outlook seems positive for everyone's favorite little gray, or now red, plastic lump. This page is all about the Game Boy's greatest strength, the sheer volume of cracking games. Forget fancy graphics or bargain bin prices, the article rightly points out that it's the software that truly matters. Nintendo has kept the little handheld swimming in titles, apparently over 1,000 of them, spanning everything from classics like Tetris and Super Mario to Turok and Superstar Soccer. Steve stepping up to offer some choice slices of Game Boy goodness. First up, under Nintendo All Sorts, is Revenge of the Gator, a pinball game praised for its charming style, catchy tunes, and smooth scrolling. It's not trying to be a physics simulator, apparently, but sounds like a proper good time. Data. Then there's Burai Fighter Deluxe, a shoot-'em-up in the vein of Space Harrier under the Shoot Me Up banner. You pilot a space cadet with a jetpack, blasting your way through levels. The reviewer reckons it's one of the finest examples of the genre on the system, even giving the mighty War-type a run for its money, and supposedly better than the SNES version. High praise indeed. Visually, you get the bold page title, a neat shot of a Game Boy Pocket, and a photo from what looks like an event showcasing the Game Boy Color, complete with a stage setup. It's clear the focus is firmly on the games that made the Game Boy a handheld powerhouse. This page continues the dive into the Game Boy's stellar software library, proving the little handheld was an absolute powerhouse despite its monochrome screen. First up, it's the absolute timeless classic, Tetris. The article declares it the best version available, and reminisces about epic, beer-fueled, linked-up Tetris-athons, where the Tetris King was crowned. Apparently, Steve and Simon lost. Hard cheese, lads. Next, under a rather delicious-sounding title, we have Legend of Zelda IV, Link's Awakening. The reviewer reckons this was the game that truly showed the Game Boy's mettle, calling it amazing, and arguably even better than the SNES classic. High praise indeed for its detailed monochrome graphics and overall quality, cementing its status as one of the all-time greats. Then we're asked if we're eating those mushrooms again. And directed to Super Mario Land. While lacking the flashy graphics of the others mentioned, it's hailed as the Game Boy's best platformer, packed with playability, secrets, and that essential bit of Miyamoto magic. Even if the artwork shows Mario from the N64 era. Finally, it's round 1. Fight! With Street Fighter 2. Capcom apparently took some flack for converting the best fighting game ever to the handheld, throwing a cheeky jab at Tekken fans along the way. Sounds like the Game Boy really did have something for everyone. This page kicks off the reviews section, aptly titled, Critical Mass. We're told there's been a bit of a shake-up in the writing team with the boy Jones off doing whatever he does, and Steve Takel joining the ranks. Apparently he's rubbish at Wipeout 64, which is just cruel. Featured here is a lineup of games set for review, including the long-awaited Mission Impossible, the brutal return of Mortal Kombat 4 complete with a rather fierce-looking fighter, the first N64 RPG in Quest 64, some beat-em-up action with Biofreaks, Bomberman hero dropping bombs, and even a brainy challenge with Virtual Chess 64. Below there's a glimpse of the review's breakdown, showing the layout for the upcoming pages which feature titles like Weetrix. There are also handy little boxes explaining the Control Freak section, which tells you how well the controls work, and the info box for all the technical gubbins like memory and rumble pack support. Looks like a packed month of N64 goodness. This page kicks off the review section proper, explaining the shiny new scoring system they'll be using. Anything hitting 90,100 is a must-have classic, deemed worthy of the coveted Total 64 Top Banana Award. You simply have to have it. Drop down to 8,089, and you're still looking at a very good game, just maybe missing that final sparkle. Scores in the 6,079 range are merely average, perhaps only for dedicated fans or those easily pleased. Below 60, things get dicey. 4,059 are games that fail to deliver on their promise, while 2039 likely have only one fleeting redeeming feature. And heaven forbid a game scores 019, that's the dreaded sin bin category, earning the Total 64 slip-up badge, and you should run screaming in the opposite direction. They've also introduced the core review team, Simon Megalomaniac Phillips, Steve No Mac Takel, apparently still terrible at Wipeout 64, Ant Multitasking Grace, John Shadow Austin, and Justin Never Finished Angel, all with amusing caricatures and lists of their current gaming obsessions. There's also a breakdown, explaining the review format, showing the verdict box with scores for graphics, sound, and playability, and the first impressions box, detailing their thoughts after just 10 minutes. The reviews roundup breakdown section highlights the revamped format for the upcoming reviews, promising all the essential info in a bite-sized chunk. Looks like a solid approach to judging the N64 library. This page dives straight into a review of Mission Impossible, the game that seems to have been in development forever. The info box gives us the lowdown. Published by Ocean, developed by Infogrames, it's a single-player third-person strategy shooter that supports the Rumble Pack and uses a memory pack for saves, all packed onto a chunky 128 MB cartridge. Before getting into the action, there's a look at the controls freak, explaining what the various buttons on the N64 pad do in the game, from moving Ethan Hunt around with the analog stick, to using the Z button to fire your chosen weapon. The review kicks off by musing on the game's long development and its arrival on the N64. The big question posed is whether Infogrames has managed to create something to rival Rare's GoldenEye, or if it's another forgettable spy caper. It sounds like Mission Impossible leans more towards strategy and investigation than just running and gunning. The reviewer notes that this kind of action/adventure shooter is becoming increasingly common, joking they're tennerpenny. We get a couple of screenshots showing Ethan and other characters in what look like interior environments. The captions add a touch of humor, one mentioning the unreliability of your fellow operatives, and another suggesting things have gone pear-shaped for Ethan, or maybe he's just checking the time. Definitely sets the stage for a review that won't shy away from a bit of banter. This page continues the Mission Impossible review, kicking off with First Impressions. The reviewer mentions the famous theme tune and highlights the quality of the military-style menu and impressive graphics, noting the freedom of movement which is looking good so far. The massive impossible graphic across the top certainly grabs your attention. The main text compares the game's graphics favorably to Duke Nukem and says Mission Impossible is head and shoulders above them in polish, likening it to Tom Cruise himself, appropriately enough. It also notes the gameplay feels more like the PlayStation's Tomb Raider series than a Doom-style shooter, with a third-person camera over Ethan Hunt's shoulder, making you feel like a remote controller for Ethan acting on Phelps' instructions. There are several screenshots showing moments from the game, like Ethan landing after climbing over a fence, a close-up on Ethan's face, and a scene suggesting a character missed their flight. The Go Gadget Go section is a fun look at the spy gear available. It mentions a secret agent wouldn't leave home without their paraphernalia, and details several items with small images and descriptions, like the smoke generator, rocket launcher, explosive gum, facemaker, dart gun, and the ever-present communicator, which updates your mission details. Seems Ethan's got plenty of toys to play with to tackle those tricky situations. This Mission Impossible game review criticizes the frustrating gameplay, citing jerky movements, questionable AI, and imprecise controls as major flaws. While the third-person perspective offers a wider view, the camera lags, leading to unexpected encounters. The reviewer acknowledges the game's originality and solid gameplay, but finds it less than hype-worthy. Controls are described as quirky and fiddly, with the analog stick impacting speed in a Mario-esque way. Screenshots depict a humorous scene with a woman in dark glasses, a failed mission leading to Siberia, and various camera perspectives, including one featuring the communicator gadget. The next page continues the Mission Impossible review, diving deeper into the game's quirks and frustrations. The reviewer highlights that the levels themselves are a mixed bag, with some being absolute gems while others are so tedious you wouldn't return to them, even if you cleared them. The jumping mechanic gets a thorough dressing down. It's a hit-and-miss affair, requiring a full stop just to land a precise leap, which feels utterly unnatural. Graphically, the environments swing between lavish and beautiful to barren and uninspiring, though the detail in some areas, like bullet holes, is called superb. However, the artificial intelligence is incredibly inconsistent, ranging from enemies who just stand around oblivious, like they forgot to be switched on, to others who are quite clever and will issue warnings if you act suspiciously. The biggest point of contention seems to be the game's credibility, or lack thereof. It's apparently maddeningly frustrating that if the game decides the odds are against you, Ethan simply surrenders, forcing you to watch a cutscene instead of fighting your way out like any sensible super spy would. Screenshots illustrate these points, showing a list of mission objectives, Ethan taking aim through a scope, a rather suspicious scientist sporting what appear to be green superhero tights, and the infamous surrender moment where Ethan puts his hands up. The reviewer makes it clear that seeing this surrender scene is a recurring annoyance. A review of Mission Impossible continues, highlighting the game's team-based gameplay. The protagonist, Ethan Hunt, and his team Jim Phelps, Jack Kiefer, Candice Parker and Andrew Dowie, each have specific roles. The reviewer finds the game a mixed bag, with some levels enjoyable and others frustrating. Despite the uneven experience, the positive aspects are deemed substantial enough to recommend the purchase. The review concludes with a humorous screenshot and question hinting at unexpected plot elements. A Mission Impossible review praises the game's strategic depth over action-oriented gameplay, contrasting it with GoldenEye. 3 highlighted levels showcase variety: a sniper mission, a vertical descent, and a covert embassy infiltration. The review gives the game an 83, with strong scores for graphics, 8, sound 8, playability 8, and replayability 8. While enjoyable, the game may feel slightly flawed, possibly due to development issues or team changes. This page kicks off the review for Mortal Kombat 4, declaring that the series is back from the console wilderness after some disappointing previous N64 outings. The headline shouts that it's bigger, badder, bloodier, and now in glorious 3 dimensions, ready to take on other fighting games on the console. The review notes that while past N64 Mortal Kombat titles were seen as a bit of a cash grab and got slammed by the critics, yes, even in these very pages, developer Euro.com has apparently given the series the makeover it desperately needed. There's a breakdown of the N64 controller mapped to the game's moves, specifically highlighting the D-pad as the way to pull off those essential special techniques for us seasoned beat-em-up players. You'll also spot a grid showing off 15 of the fighters you can choose from, promising plenty of variety. And yes, you still get the trademark fatalities, and apparently some stages even have their own unique hazards, like sending your opponent down a rather unpleasant well as shown in the screenshot. Looks like the Mortal Kombat dynasty might just be back on track. This page starts with the reviewer's first impressions of Mortal Kombat 4, and surprisingly, they're positive. After previous N64 disappointments, it seems MK4 is actually pretty good, fast, and might even be the best beat-em-up on the console. High praise indeed. Then, it jumps straight into the good stuff. That's gotta hurt. Resident beat-em-up expert Aaron Taylor has put together his top 10 favorite fatalities. We get a glimpse of the grisly delights on offer, like Quan Chi's leg rip, where he beats his opponent to death with their own limb. Charming. Reptile's face chew, which sounds rather messy, and Tanya's kiss of death, where every limb is snapped the wrong way before exploding. And let's not forget Kai's body rip, tearing opponents in two, like a cheap serviette. Each entry includes the character, the move name, the command inputs, essential for pulling off the gruesome spectacle, a small screenshot, and a description of the carnage. It's made clear these are just personal favorites, so plenty more lovely ways to finish your opponent are waiting in the game. This page continues the Mortal Kombat 4 review, starting with Aaron giving his overall thoughts. He reckons MK4 is the top beat-em-up on the N64 right now, calling it arcade perfect, and praising the wealth of moves and fatalities, though he notes it lacks the subtlety found elsewhere. Seems like a solid pick-up-and-play fighter, which is always a plus on console. The main review text talks about what you expect from a Mortal Kombat game. Plenty of blood, bizarre characters, and moves galore, and confirms MK4 delivers, adding the third dimension as an expected bonus. While giving props to Fighter's Destiny as a decent N64 fighter, the review ultimately positions MK4 as the best on the system currently, acknowledging that N64 owners are still missing out on big hitters like Tekken and Street Fighter. Finally, we get a section introducing some of the fighters under the rather direct title, MK Hard Boys, and Girls obviously. It gives a quick rundown of the backstories for characters like Johnny Cage, Fujin, Jarek, and Jax, detailing their reasons for getting involved in the latest bout against Shinnok. Looks like the usual world-saving stakes are firmly in place. The next page dives deeper into the Mortal Kombat 4 review, kicking off with a couple of screenshots showing the action. One looks like a classic versus screen with Raiden and Reptile, the other perhaps a special move or fatality sequence, complete with witty captions about Reptile's ballet steps and whipping out your weapon. The review text gets stuck in, noting that the removal of babalities, animalities, and friendship moves is actually a good thing, focusing the game squarely on the core fighting mechanics. It seems the developers, Euro.com, have done a cracking job, putting the emphasis on learning the moves and strategies. They reckon that despite the slightly daft exterior, there's a masterful beat-em-up under the surface, especially when compared to some of the, shall we say, graphically challenged fighters already on the N64. Frankly, it sounds like a breath of fresh air on the console. Warrington Nogre. We also get more character introductions, carrying on from the previous page. This time we meet Kai, a former White Lotus chap, Liu Kang who's been off rescuing princesses, Quan Chi the strange sorcerer, and Raiden, the god of thunder himself, all gearing up to take on Shinnok. Looks like the usual suspects are back, ready to save the day again. This page carries on with the Mortal Kombat 4 review, featuring a rather enthusiastic Steve's comment, who reckons this game will have your mum glued to the door, wondering about all the grunting. He praises the N64 version for looking much more solid and polished than the PlayStation, managing to capture more of the arcade feel. Apparently, while it might lack a bit of finesse and combat ballet, it makes up for it with pure, in-your-face brutality and glorious fatalities, the glaced cherry on the top of this artificial cream cake. Below that, there's a section pondering if you can't teach a old dog new tricks, discussing how opinions are split on the effectiveness of the 3D environments and camera work. Some feel it's unnecessary gloss, but the reviewer argues that sidestepping attacks and the camera panning around adds something worthwhile. Finally, we get more character bios, introducing Reiko, a general in Shinnok's army, Reptile, an extinct reptilian responsible for many deaths, Scorpion, who accepts Quan Chi's offer for a chance at revenge against Raiden, and Shinnok himself, freed from the Netherrealm to wage war against the Elder Gods. Looks like the roster is filling out nicely. The next page continues the Mortal Kombat 4 review, delving into how it handles the transition to 3D compared to games like Tekken. The reviewer feels MK4 rises from the ashes, not quite having the polish of Namco Fighters or the innovation of games like Fighter's Destiny, but it certainly holds its own as a brutal beat-em-up. They note that while the blood and gut spectacle is fun, it might get a bit old eventually, even with the gore turned off. Despite this, it's still considered a great game, and the pinnacle of beat-em-ups on the N64 at this moment, though they hint that even better things are coming. Sprinkled among the text are screenshots, showcasing the game's graphical style and signature over-the-top violence, complete with humorous captions like, "Hey kids, don't try this at home, it really hurts," and a dig at Sub-Zero's pose. Below the main review, we get introductions to 3 more characters: Sonya Blade, now part of Earth's defense agency, the new Sub-Zero, Kuai Liang, following his brother's footsteps, and Tanya, a traitorous ambassador's daughter leading refugees into Edenia, only to betray them. Finally, the verdict box delivers the scores. Graphics get an 8 for being solid and bloody, sound a 7 as you'd expect from an arcade fighter, playability a strong 9 for being easy to pick up, lastability an 8 with plenty of options but not a timeless feel, and an overall score of a very respectable 90. The next page dives into Quest 64, heralded here as the Nintendo 64's first proper RPG. The review kicks off by noting the N64 has been rather slow to the RPG party, arriving 2 years after release, while fans drool over the likes of Zelda, Ocarina of Time and Mother 3. The info box confirms it's an RPG from publisher THQ and developer Imagineer single-player, US version, saving via battery backup and taking up a hefty 128 MB. The main text sets the stage by introducing the game and its potential role in the console's library, suggesting it might fill the gap until bigger RPGs arrive. A control freak section breaks down the basic controls on the N64 pad for controlling young Brian, covering the analog stick for movement, the A button for interaction and attacking, the C buttons for casting spells, the start button for pausing, and the shoulder button for a secondary weapon. Screenshots scattered across the page show glimpses of the game's world and turn-based battles. The text then introduces the protagonist, Brian, a young lad on a quest, noting his original Japanese name was Shin-Jak, before being westernized because, apparently, we can't handle foreign names. Brian is a spirit tamer, collecting elemental spirits found around the world to aid him on his journey. This page gives us the reviewer's first impressions of Quest 64, and it sounds like they were pretty hyped for it, even begging to get their hands on it. They reckon the graphics are proper gorgeous and there's a certain charm about exploring towns and, potentially nicking stuff from folks if the caption referencing Brian's thieving hands is anything to go by. Tut-tut indeed. Gameplay-wise it's described as being similar to Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie for exploration but without the jumping, which is a curious choice. The combat is a mashup, blending real-time movement within a ring, think SNES classics like Zelda, with turn-based action straight out of a Final Fantasy title. Seems you can move about, pick your magic or item, or just whack things with your stick. One standout feature praised is the real-time day and night cycle. The sky changes color dramatically, from orange and pink, to red, blue, and eventually black, adding loads of atmosphere, especially in woodland areas. Screenshots showcase the contrast between the clear views of Dondoran during the day and the spooky darkness at night. Brian's quest to find his disappeared father and stolen magical tome seems to be the main driver here, and apparently, our hero looks a bit less intimidating than Link. Sounds like a solid early N64 RPG, trying some interesting things. Simon's review of Quest 64 is highly negative, calling it a watered-down RPG, lacking the impact of Final Fantasy V2. The game features a cast of characters, including a helpful innkeeper and a winged adventurer, along with the King of Dondoran. While magic is present, combining elements doesn't offer significant benefits, and basic weapons often outperform spells. A significant flaw is the removal of buying, selling, and bartering, leaving players unable to acquire items. The review concludes with screenshots of a disappointed Brian. This page continues the review of Quest 64, diving into its presentation. Graphically, it's praised for impressive touches, colorful backgrounds, and a lack of fogging, allowing views for miles. The day/night cycle is also highlighted as a nice atmospheric touch. However, the review points out a lack of continuity in character appearances and generic monster designs. The spells and effects aren't particularly impressive either. Screenshots showcase different moments, including battles and town scenes, with humorous captions poking fun at the game and its protagonist, Brian, from commenting on his inability to control his hair, to questioning his involvement in crop circles. A separate section features Steve's comment. As someone not typically an RPG fan, Steve found Quest 64 merely competent but ultimately uninspired. He notes the lack of innovation and humorously suggests Brian's distinctive hairstyle is the only truly unique thing about the experience. While it has the advantage of being the first N64 RPG, he feels it's just a shame it wasn't more creative. This page dives deeper into the Quest 64 experience, kicking off with a few action shots under the banner, "Let's get ready to rumble." We see Brian squaring off against various foes, from a fearsome dragon, where the reviewer doubts his chances, to a pesky mandrake, highlighting the game's turn-based combat and spell effects. The captions add a bit of dry wit about Brian's moves, and the options available. Moving on to the audio, the music is deemed pretty annoying, just more generic RPG fare, and the sound effects are simply your standard thuds and swishes. The core message is then delivered in a bold summary. Despite its issues, Quest 64 is deemed thoroughly playable and often fun, but its simplicity is a double-edged sword. Experienced RPG veterans will probably find it lacking in depth, while newcomers might find its straightforward nature and uncluttered menus appealing. The review touches on the gameplay loop, mentioning the basic quests, find a guy, beat a guy, and the frequency of random battles which can get repetitive. Ultimately, under the header "Where's the buyability?", the verdict is that Quest 64 isn't the groundbreaking RPG everyone wished for, but it's still a pretty good effort. The page wraps up with further screenshots, showing Brian venturing into new areas, like a spooky forest, with the reviewer warning Brian off, and the deck of a ship, perhaps heading for a new continent or maybe just feeling a bit seasick according to the caption. This page continues the review of Quest 64, following on from the previous page's look at the combat and audio. Kicking things off are a couple more screenshots. One showing little Brian looking rather intimidated by a giant leprechaun, the caption questioning if he stands a chance, which seems fair, and another showing a less scary but apparently tougher second boss. The review then ponders if it's a challenging quest, noting the difficulty level is a bit odd. Apparently, if you fight everything, you'll likely run out of juice and die. The game also seems to miss some core RPG features, like being able to buy and sell gear. You just get what you're given, and most items are single-use. Plus, no party members to help you out, which seems a bit lonely for a young lad traversing a magical world. Further down, the main verdict is laid out. Graphics get a 7, called superb in places, but occasionally dodgy. Oh dear. Sound scores a 6 for being formulaic and sometimes annoying. Told you so. Playability is a 7, simple and fun but frustrating. Lastability gets a 6, not enough depth to keep you hooked. Overall, it lands a 79, suggested for RPG newcomers, but probably not for seasoned veterans. There's also a final snap of the starting town, Kenisha, with a caption amusingly suggesting it was obviously tailored for a AES audience. Biofess.eaks, a 128 MB beat-em-up from Midway and Sapphire, is reviewed. The game, for 1 or 2 players, features a grim future where contact sports are deadly. Controls are detailed, utilizing analog sticks, face buttons, and shoulder buttons for movement, attacks, and special maneuvers. Biofay.e.eaks, biologically flying robot-enhanced armored syntoids, pits corporations against each other in brutal 3D combat, mimicking Mortal Kombat's fast-paced action and gore. The reviewer praises its innovative approach, similar to Fighter's Destiny and Mace. The Dark Age, highlighting expanding backgrounds. Screenshots showcase the game's violence and dynamic battle arenas. Pointers. This page dives deeper into the biof.ore.aks review, detailing the game's features beyond just the mechanics. It highlights the massive, interactive arenas featuring environmental hazards like dangerous lava pools, and even underwater combat with pesky piranhas. Though the reviewer notes these aren't always effectively integrated into the gameplay, a cool idea mentioned is each character's ability to fly for a short time, handy for reaching higher platforms. But sadly, mid-air combat sounds a bit rubbish and pointless. They also all have projectile weapons, which apparently can lead to boring standoffs. The page heavily focuses on the game's extreme violence with a bold gore galore section. Several screenshots back this up, showing characters like Bullseye, Zipperhead, Delta, Cyclown, and Sappo losing limbs or generally being reduced to a gory mess. The captions are brilliantly deadpan, noting Delta's missing arm and the mess it's caused, or Sappo's unfortunate encounter with some dodgy cream, or just extreme dismemberment. It's clearly a game that doesn't shy away from the red stuff. This page continues the biof.eaks review, kicking off with Steve's take, who reckons it's a solid button basher that's good fun, especially loving the jetpacks and lasers for flying over your opponent and raining down fire. The review highlights the character design as simply stunning, producing some of the nastiest fighters you're likely to see. They rave about Zipperhead, a mutant mashed up with spinning blades, weapons, and spikes, and Purge, described as a fire-spewing human helicopter with deadly claws. Minitech, a Cyberman bull with a wrecking ball, also gets a shout-out. Graphics get a glowing review, with Sapphire praised for making it the best-looking fighting game around. They specifically mention the fluid animation thanks to soft skin technology, which apparently looks far better than the polygon issues in Fighter's Destiny, or WCW, versus NWO. The detail extends to changing facial expressions during the fight, and it runs at a slick 30 frames per second with no slowdown. Gameplay details cover the shield ability to block projectiles, forcing players into brutal close-quarters combat, and a first-person perspective mode which, while visually impressive, is apparently a nightmare to control. Finally, they introduce a few of the freaks, like Bullseye, the Duke Nukem lookalike, Sabotage with her spears and shapely rear end, Minitech the Cyberbull, Sapo, a giant turtle who's ready to kick some backside, and Cyclown, who's noted for being scarier than the clown in Fighter's Destiny, though sadly his mallet doesn't squeak. This page wraps up the Bio F.E.AKS review, confirming there's plenty to keep you busy with loads of moves, combos, hidden fighters, and a difficulty level that'll see you torn limb from limb in seconds on hard. It seems it won't dethrone Tekken for the serious combo artists, but for those who prefer the button-mashing, gore-filled madness of Mortal Kombat, it's right up your street. The reviewer, John, notes the game revels in ripping limbs off, spewing blood everywhere, and decapitations, which frankly sounds like a right laugh. Despite the overall good graphics mentioned previously, he points out the shields are a bit rubbish. Sound gets a decent score for sampled speech and techno tunes. Playability is noted as easy to pick up but not particularly deep, like a shallow puddle apparently. Lastability is good with plenty of moves and a stiff challenge. The verdict is in. Graphics and sound both score an 8. Playability and lastability get a 7, for an overall score of 84. It's a solid beat-em-up with good ideas that don't quite hit the mark perfectly. You'll also find a couple of amusing character captions, with Purge asking about Toast and Zipperhead, pondering the gents. This page kicks off with a look at Bomberman Hero on the N64, presented here as an info piece which suggests it's not a full review just yet. We get the lowdown on the game's vital stats. It's a platform game from Hudson Soft, developed in-house, supports 12 players, odd, the text says 1 player later, is the Japanese version, takes a whopping 128 MB on the cartridge, sadly has no save feature, but does support the Rumble Pack. The main feature poses the question of how this latest Bomberman outing will fare, especially as the N64s already had a few Bomberman titles, some apparently being a bit cack. The core text delves into how this game shifts the focus from the series' traditional frenetic multiplayer chaos to a one-player adventure, which the writer seems both surprised and slightly skeptical about, noting that the classic fun came from booting bombs at your mates. We're shown a handy control freak guide, explaining how the N64 pad maps to Bomberman's moves, everything from movement and jumping to dropping and throwing bombs, plus changing the camera view. There are also a couple of small screenshots. One shows a vehicle escape attempt with a caption mentioning Legoland Express and security screening, and another highlights a rather large laser beam, stating it's definitely not one of the piddly little affairs. It looks like an interesting departure for the explosive little chap. This page continues the review of Bomberman Hero, kicking off with some first impressions that praise the initial level's bright colors and smooth gameplay, but quickly note that the repetitiveness set in rather fast. The review goes on to discuss how the platform genre has evolved with classics like Sonic and Mario, and questions if this new 3D Bomberman can keep up with the big boys like Banjo-Kazooie. It seems Hudson Soft took a bit of a gamble, abandoning the series' signature multiplayer mayhem for a single-player adventure, which the writer amusingly calls a suicide of the gameplay element Bomberman is known for. The core aim is collecting diamonds and whacking enemies with bombs, though the review notes there aren't loads of options for attacking, mostly just kicking, throwing or dropping them. You can also use bombs to blow open doors, which is handy. There are screenshots scattered about showing Bomberman in action, tackling various levels and enemies, including some particularly odd-looking bouncing Zebedee lookalikes. There's also a mention and image of Bomberman using a jetpack to get around. Over in John's comment box he flat out states that while it's an improvement on the dire Bomberman 64, it's still only okay across the board, graphics, sound and gameplay. He pretty damningly concludes that okay does not cut it on the N64, especially with the likes of Banjo-Kazooie hogging the spotlight, leaving no place for this game. It sounds like we're still waiting for that truly superb Bomberman platformer. This page continues the review of Bomberman Hero, and oh dear, it seems Steve in the comment box is absolutely fuming. He calls it a travesty and a tragedy, complaining it's a terrible platformer that's late to the party and completely misses the point by losing the classic multiplayer mayhem. It sounds like he's proper gutted. The Bomberman he knew and loved is gone. The main review text delves a bit more into the mechanics, noting Bomberman moves quite well, jumping, walking in 8 directions, and pulling himself up ledges. They like the bright, colorful graphics and the varied environments like underwater sections and canyons. However, they quickly introduce the downside. Apparently the end of level nasties, which sounds dramatic, are actually a bit of a letdown. The bosses are described as easy, simply requiring you to fire bombs at them repeatedly. The screenshots show Bomberman facing off against some strange foes, including what's humorously captioned as a giant lobster and a laser gun and a half, along with Bomberman pondering a fairground ride that looks suspiciously like a tank. The page reinforces the feeling from the previous one that this platforming venture hasn't quite hit the mark. This page continues the deep dive into Bomberman Hero, showing off some of the different ways Bomberman, bless his little cotton socks, gets around. The different strokes section highlights that it's not all just running and jumping. Sometimes the little chappie is strapped into various contraptions. We see screenshots of him flying with a jetpack, which apparently feels like pilot wings but without the freedom, rather linear then. Hovering over water with a helicopter beanie hat. Good luck to his neck muscles, says the reviewer. And even scooting along with propeller-applied boots, tackling crabs and manta rays. The Big Bang section weighs in, suggesting that while it's an improvement on Bomberman 64, it sadly falls short when compared to the big hitters like Banjo-Kazooie. The core gameplay, despite the changing scenery and vehicles, remains frustratingly repetitive. They note the enemies, regardless of their appearance, do pretty much the same thing, and the level design is consistently linear. Finally, we get the verdict. Graphics and sound both score a respectable 6, described as colorful, smooth, and featuring nice cartoon tunes, though nothing groundbreaking. Playability also gets a 6 for being easy to pick up. However, lastability scores a mere 5, deemed too easy and not particularly addictive. The overall score lands at 63, with the summary stating, Bomberman's betrayal can't stop this cutesy little romp being fun. It seems despite the flaws, the game manages to be a mildly enjoyable, if brief, distraction. This page dives into the world of Virtual Chess 64 from Titus, bringing the classic board game to the console for 1 or 2 players. The big question on everyone's mind, and the reviewers, is whether a game of chess can really find a home on the N64 and appeal to a new generation used to explosions and platforming. Apparently, the game offers a choice between a standard 2D view or a rather fiddly 3D perspective that requires constant camera adjustments. There's a bit of console jazziness thrown in, like animations of pieces fighting when captured, which sounds like it could get old quickly. However, it does boast an excellent tutorial covering everything a beginner needs to know, from rules to tactics. Despite initial doubts about a chess game on a console, the reviewer found it became enjoyable after playing. The verdict gives graphics a low score of 4, noting it's pretty much what you'd expect for a chess game. Sound gets a 5 for a soothing soundtrack. Playability and lastability both score a 6, largely thanks to that handy tutorial and the fact that if you like chess you'll play it. The overall score is 54, summed up as, not an exhilarating ride, but what do you expect from this recreational activity? Sport. The image caption cheekily asks why you wouldn't just buy a proper chess set if you love the game so much. Sounds like a decent, if slightly uninspired, digital board game. The next page is a comprehensive advertisement from Excitement Direct, the Nintendo specialists, detailing deals on 64 consoles, new and second-hand games, controllers, steering wheels, rumble packs, and various other peripherals and accessories, plus a swap service. This page dives into the Total Recall section, which promises a complete rundown of every N64 game ever released. It starts by explaining the essential icons you'll see, telling you about save methods, memory pack, battery, password, rumble pack compatibility, cartridge size, and how many mates can join in the fun. There are also handy country icons for the UK, Japan, and the USA, letting you know where the game originates. Then we get into the game listings. 1080 Degrees Snowboarding, from the Wave Race 64 crew, gets a solid 89 out of 100, noted as well made but with limited replay. Airborder 64, however, sounds a bit average, landing a 78 and suggesting your cash might be better spent elsewhere. For baseball fans, All-Star Baseball 99 is hailed as potentially the best money can buy, praised for graphics and commentary, scoring a strong 87. Finally, Banjo-Kazooie is simply described as a beast of a game, and possibly the best platformer on any console, earning a stunning 96, and the coveted total 64 Top Banana Award. Definitely one to track down. This page continues the Total Recall roundup, sizing up a few more N64 titles. First up is Blast Corps, Rare's debut on the console, described as an original arcade puzzle game where you demolish buildings to save the world. It gets a respectable 89 out of 100. Next we have Bust-A-Move 2, a puzzler that apparently caused many sleepless nights, but the reviewer feels it's a bit of a rip-off unless it's going cheap, landing a 60. Doom 64 makes an appearance, bringing the classic PC experience to the N64 with updated graphics. It's good fun if you like the originals, but apparently doesn't stack up to GoldenEye, scoring an 89. Then there's Diddy Kong Racing, cheekily called the game that Mario Kart should have been. It borrows ideas from Mario 64 for its single-player mode, and is a fun racer, though perhaps a tad cutesy for the older crowd. It earns a top-tier 95, and the total 64 Top Banana Award, just like Banjo-Kazooie on the last page. Duke Nukem 64 arrives, featuring the main man's console debut. It brings the PC version's attitude and design, minus the dodgy strippers, and gets a solid 95. Finally, Extreme G shows the N64 can do fast racing, essentially a Wipeout-style game on bikes. It's a rollercoaster ride with sometimes frustrating controls but excellent fun overall, achieving a 94. It seems this page is full of high scorers, except for old Bust-A-Move 2. This N64 game review highlights a range of titles. Fighter's Destiny, 93, is praised as a unique and strong fighting game. Forsaken, 90, impresses with its fast-paced 3D shooter and multiplayer. GoldenEye 007, 98, is deemed the best N64 game, lauded for its missions, graphics, and multiplayer. GT64, 90, provides a satisfying racing experience, while ISS 64, 97, excels as the top soccer game. Jeopardy! 21, is criticized as dull. Lylat Wars! 94, captivates with stunning visuals and multiplayer. Mace: The Dark Age! 89, offers a gory beat-em-up alternative. Overall, the page features high scores, with GoldenEye and ISS 64 standing out, while Jeopardy receives a dismal rating. This page continues the Total Recall roundup, dishing out more expert verdicts on N64 titles. We see Madden 64 getting a respectable 89, lauded for its AI and gameplay despite lacking the official NFL license. Major League Baseball scores a less impressive 79, noted for playability over graphics, but failing to match up to All-Star 99. Fan favorite Mario Kart 64 lives up to its reputation with a fantastic 93, called the most fun racing game on the console, improving on its SNES predecessor. Mystical Ninja starring Goemon arrives on Western Shores with an 89, praised as a diverse and humorous adventure with excellent graphics. NBA Courtside nets an 81 for its simulation attempt, though the graphics are considered a bit rough despite the wealth of options. Pilotwings 64 soars with a superb 95, highlighted as one of the system's best with its inventive missions and amazing graphics. Quake gets a solid 90 for bringing the scary PC experience over, with multiplayer, though it doesn't quite dethrone GoldenEye. Finally, Rampage World Tour crashes and burns with a dismal 32, described as plain dull, and something to be avoided at all costs. The next page continues the Total Recall roundup, kicking things off with the absolute essential, Super Mario 64. Unsurprisingly, it scores a magnificent 96, hailed as the groundbreaking game that started it all. We then move on to Puzzlers with Tsunami, scoring a respectable 86, deemed an addictive but slightly dull-looking puzzle game, though perhaps not quite the best of the bunch. That honor goes to Wheatrix, scoring a fantastic 93, praised as a fresh, original and highly addictive puzzle game with a superb two-player mode. For action, Turok, Dinosaur Hunter grabs an 89, seen as an excellent game with fearsome weaponry, even if it was a bit overshadowed by GoldenEye. The Racing on Water in Wave Race 64 also scores an 89, technically superb, but perhaps a bit short-lived unless you're keen on time trials. If wrestling's your bag, WCW vs NWO comes in strong with a 92, considered an excellent fighting game loaded with characters and one of the best four-player options on the console. On the pitch, World Cup 98 gets a solid 90, noted for having better gameplay than FIFA but maybe not a must-have if you already owned RTWC 98. Finally, Yoshi's Story scores the lowest on this page with an 84. The reviewers were apparently disappointed, expecting something more akin to Mario World but getting a simpler, shorter 2D platformer that was too easy for seasoned gamers. This page continues the comprehensive Total Recall roundup, listing a boatload more N64 games and their review scores. We've got everything from the low-scoring Us Masters at a mere 28 and Dynamite Soccer scraping a 25, right up to the footy greats like GQ World Soccer 3 smashing it with a 97 and League Striker not far behind on 93. It's quite the mixed bag, covering various genres from fighters like Art of Fighting Twins scoring a solid 89, to racers like San Francisco Rush on 57, and even sports games like Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey 98 netting an 82. The scores are all here along with who published and developed them, and which issue they were first reviewed in. Seems like not everything was a guaranteed hit back then. This page is a massive advert for gameplay, offering the world's most powerful N64 consoles and games at Britain's lowest prices, promising unbeatable service, huge choice, fast delivery, and guaranteed quality on official UK products. This page is a full advert for Gameplay, Britain's largest mail-order computer games supplier, showcasing a wide range of N64, PSX, and Virtual Boy hardware, accessories, hint books, and PlayStation games, all promising quality and service. This Forsaken guide focuses on Mission 8, Dreadnought. The objective is to infiltrate the Babala's repair yard, disable the Dreadnought, activate a homing beacon, and survive for a minute before escaping. The guide emphasizes the game's dynamic enemy AI, advising players to use the Transpulse gun and wall bounces against the boss. Standard N64 controls are listed, and the gameplay walkthrough details how to handle initial enemy fire, navigate tunnels, collect items, disable the Dreadnought, and defeat its accompanying tank. Finally, players must locate the homing beacon and endure a minute-long final battle before escaping. The Forsaken guide continues with Mission 9, Tube, where players must destroy a hidden spawn carrier unit in the NYC subway. The guide warns against killing all 50 enemies, emphasizing efficient navigation and conserving energy. Mission 10, Death to the Invader, tasks players with defending the home base matrix from attack. This is described as a challenging mission, demanding careful energy management and enemy elimination before engaging the mercenary boss, Nutter. The guide provides specific strategies for defeating Nutter, including using Solaris missiles and trapping him in a corridor. The next page dives back into the Forsaken guide, picking up with Mission 11, Nuke. After surviving level 10, you're sent straight back to level 1 for a bit of a speedrun challenge. The goal? Wipe out all craft and finish the level in just 2.5 minutes. Better dust off those flying skills, eh? Then it's on to Mission 12, Catch the Orb. This one sounds a bit more epic. You're tasked with grabbing the Golden Orb of Matter, which apparently has huge significance and will really mess with your nemesis Babalas. Watch out though, the guide warns that 4 bounty hunters are hanging around. Key notes point out that the meta tank goes boom big time, so back away. Also, the guide insists you use the trusty Trojax gun on the mercenaries. The gameplay involves navigating through various rooms, dealing with enemies like the meta tank, collecting power-ups, and eventually facing Surberg and Scepter, who are trying to nick the orb. Take 'em out, snag the prize, and head back to the start. Sounds like a proper treasure hunt with added explosions. Mission 13 in the Forsaken guide tasks players with clearing MDF resistance in the Alpha installation's volcanic tunnels. This level lacks energy and weapon refills, requiring careful resource management. Players start in a domed room, grab a power pod, and navigate through a lava room, encountering enemy craft. Further progress involves collecting power-ups, defeating aerial tanks and smaller craft, and exploring multiple corridors and rooms containing more enemies, including 11 craft. The final objective is to destroy a cannon, completing the mission. Screenshots show the level's layout and enemy density. The next page carries on with the Forsaken guide, detailing 2 more missions you'll need to conquer. First up is Mission 14, Moldroid, where you're tasked with escaping the big robot's lair. The guide walks you through clearing out cannons, grabbing a power pod, navigating different rooms and corridors, and eventually facing off against Maldroid himself. Once you've chipped away at his health, you activate a homing beacon, and then it's a mad dash to survive for 1 minute while fending off more enemies. Screenshots show the rock room, corridors, and the arena where Maldroid hangs out. Following that is Mission 15, simply titled, Ship. This one sounds like a proper carnage fest, challenging you to destroy a whopping 43 enemies aboard a troop transport. You're thrown straight into the action, fighting off craft immediately. then working your way through various shafts, corridors, red, blue, grey, and rooms, eliminating tanks, cannons, and plenty more craft. The guide lays out the path and tells you exactly what kind of resistance to expect in each area. Screenshots give you a glimpse of the industrial environments you'll be blasting through. Looks like a relentless clear-out job. This page carries on with the Forsaken Guide, tackling Mission 16, Power Down. The main goal here is to track down and obliterate the MDF's Comnavi router, which sounds rather important for getting to the ultimate goal, Ballas. The key notes warn you about timers starting when you hit certain clocks. The advice is to ignore enemies and just leg it, because getting held up means you'll miss the timed door. If you do fail, just smack the clock again to restart the timer. Lovely. Lassie's Dakama, the gameplay section details a bit of a timed maze. You start underwater, grab a power pod, navigate tunnels and rooms, dealing with enemies, swiftly, presumably given the timer warning, and hitting switches. There are lots of different environments to zoom through, including vents and a reactor room. You'll need to activate various switches and overcome timed doors to progress. The guide eventually leads you to the Comnavi router itself, where you'll need to activate it, deal with incoming craft as its protective barrier drops, and then finally blast the router to bits. Sounds like a frantic race against the clock, and some persistent baddies. The screenshots give you a look at the various corridors and combat encounters, including a glimpse of the Comnavi area you'll be targeting. Looks like another challenging mission relying on speed and accurate navigation. This page continues the Forsaken Guide, moving on to Mission 17, Save the Drone. The main goal here is to guide and protect a carrier drone through a bunker complex, as it's carrying a crucial device. The key notes suggest that having the extra life from the previous level will be handy. A smart strategy is to initially ignore the drone and switches, clear out all the enemies first right up to the final room, then go back and activate the drone and switches. Be warned though, more enemies might pop up even after you think you've cleared the path. The gameplay section provides a detailed walkthrough. You'll follow tracks, hit switches, navigate various rooms including a confusing maze area, complete with a specific route listed. Good luck remembering that. Split level rooms, and a lift room. The guide has you activating multiple switches throughout the level and dealing with various enemy craft, tanks and cannons, before finally heading back to the drone in the beam-in room to escort it to the final red room. Sounds like a bit of a backtracking escort mission, which is always thrilling, isn't it? Worry. The screenshots show off different sections of the level, giving you a visual hint of the corridors and combat you'll face while protecting that precious drone. Forsaken Missions 18 and 19 are detailed. Mission 18, Battle Base, tasks players with locating a power crystal, escaping with a homing beacon, and surviving for a minute. Players must navigate rooms filled with enemies and conserve limited resources. Mission 19, Ramkhan, is described as the penultimate mission. Players must reach a homing beacon within Ramkhan's lair, a dark metallic den. Patience and careful navigation are crucial. Players must weaken and defeat Ramkhan, then reach a homing beacon and survive for another minute. The page includes character art and screenshots of gameplay. Taka. This Forsaken Guide continues after Ramkhan, focusing on missions 20 and 21. Mission 20, Nuke, requires clearing the entire level in under a minute and 40 seconds. Mission 21, Defend the Power, tasks the player with protecting 4 reactor cores as they activate. The first core's shields activate automatically, but subsequent cores require strategic defense. Placing pine mines at tunnel entrances is crucial for handling the large number of incoming craft. The guide details the sequence, including finding an extra life and attacking enemies targeting the cores. Specific colored corridors are highlighted, and pinkish ones should be avoided. Screenshots illustrate the chaotic combat and reactor room/tunnel sequences. The Forsaken Guide details missions against mechanoids. Mission 22, Refinery, requires destroying 50 MDF Elite Core to cleanse the facility, navigating various obstacles. Mission 23, Sewer, echoes the first mission, Nuke, with a timed kill objective. Completion unlocks a celebratory message, but no mention of the next planet. A cheat allows players to skip levels by inputting a specific button sequence on the start screen, granting 5 lives. This page is the cover of a Gamebuster guide focused on Nintendo 64. It features a striking graphic of a character in a yellow and black outfit, alongside the large title, 64 Gamebuster, putting you one step ahead. Inside you'll find the UK's best-selling compilation of hints, cheats and solutions for Nintendo 64. Chunny. The cover teases content for several titles, including E.AKS, Yoshi's Story, Buster Move 2, and Turok. It also highlights a GT64 Championship Edition feature, telling you to race away these GT blues. Waitrix is also mentioned, suggesting things can only get wetter with our guide. And, following on from the detailed mission analysis we saw earlier, there's a promotion for the complete guide to the must-have 3D blaster, Forsaken. Looks like plenty of help packed inside for N64 players needing a boost. This page is another cracking N64 Game Buster cover, this one labeled 64 Game Meter. Right then, strap in because this promises a whopping 100 pages of tips, cheats and solutions to all the very best N64 games. A bold claim, but who doesn't love a good cheat sheet? Warrington Null, they're shouting about content busted in issue 4, specifically highlighting guides for Forsaken, that dark futuristic shooter. GT64, the proper racing simulator, looks like the Toyota Supra is featured here too, just like the car on the cover. Waitrix, the quirky 3D puzzle game that's surprisingly addictive. And Buster Move 2, Bob the Bubble Dragon makes an appearance, confirming that gem. Plus, they promise much more. Visually, you've got the sleek racing car, Bob the Dragon looking smug, and what appear to be shiny gold coins scattered about, perhaps suggesting the bounty of secrets within. And is that a faint N64 console outline lurking in the background? Sneaky. It all points to a serious dive into getting the upper hand in your favorite N64 titles. Looks like a solid resource for any keen N64 player. This page is absolutely brimming with Banjo-Kazooie goodness, specifically focused on cheats. Fitting given the previous page was all about Game Busters. We've got the game's title emblazoned across the top, the ever-cheerful Banjo and his feathered mate Kazooie looking ready for action, and the rather brilliant Cheaty Monkeys logo because, well, who doesn't love a good cheat? They're dishing out the secrets, starting with how to bag yourself 100 red feathers, involving a trip to Mad Monster Mansion as a pumpkin, and chatting to a spellbook chap in Treasure Trove Cove to get the code. Then it gets properly silly, with the bottles picture puzzle cheats. Apparently, completing these puzzles unlocks all sorts of daft effects, like Big Head Banjo, Giant Banjo-Kazooie, Big Hands and Feet Banjo, and even turning Banjo into a washing machine. Yes, you read that right. You unlock these by completing puzzles in Banjo's house, after getting a Jiggy from Treasure Trove Cove, and Bottles gives you the codes to enter on the sandcastle floor. Brilliant! The washing machine one is linked to beating Puzzle 6, and then another one Bottles lies about. Heggy. Finally, they tell you how to boost your egg count to 200, by finding another spellbook bloke in Bubble Gloop Swamp. Looks like plenty of ridiculous fun to be had messing about with these codes. The next page features the Cheat Zone and offers tips and tricks for Mortal Kombat 4 on the N64, because who doesn't love a good cheat code? It includes instructions for unlocking the cheat menu, activating automatic fatalities, and playing as hidden characters like Goro, Meat, and Noob Saibot. There's even a cheeky little blurb about fresh bananas from Cheaty Monkey, clearly a primate with a penchant for video game secrets. Finally, there's a console shop ad that seems to be selling everything from joypads to optical lenses. This page presents cheat codes for Forsaken and All-Star Baseball 99. For Forsaken, it unveils the locations of secret characters like Scepter, Excop, Jo, Nubia, Sherbero, Mephistophun, HK5, and Dr. Nepentha. There are also codes for unlimited nitro boosts, psychedelic mode, wireframe mode, and bypassing the intro ads. In All-Star Baseball 99, entering Atomibook in the cheat menu turns one team into bug-eyed green aliens in Alienopolis Stadium. The next page has cheats for Waitrix on the Nintendo 64. It's not exactly a cheat, but more of an effect that lets you see the amazing physics engine. This can be done by completing the 16 practice rounds, then completing every game mode except practice and multiplayer, so that the first background screen is green. Holding UPC and moving the control stick lets you view a large spike of water, whilst holding down C lets you create a water vortex which you can control. There is also an advert for Pride Nintendo, 64 game cases. Warrington Tra. This page is the letters section of Total 64 magazine, aptly named The Firing Line. It features a bear and bird duo, seemingly Banjo and Kazooie, in the top left corner. The main letter is from Paul Swanston of Newark, who is tired of the N64 versus PlayStation debate. He argues that both consoles have great games, and that the N64 should be compared to the PlayStation in its early days. Paul also wonders if it's possible to beat 100 opponents in Fighter's Destiny without conceding a point, and asks about the Joker character. The magazine's response, The Truth, agrees with Paul's points and mentions the growing disparity between Nintendo/Rare games and other third-party titles. They also tease an upcoming Rayman 2 preview and state that there is no easy way to get the Joker in Fighter's Destiny, short of becoming an editor. The page also includes an advert from Gamester LMP, giving away joypads and steering wheels to readers who get their letters printed. The next page features more letters from readers, this time responding to the magazine's content and raising a few questions. David Lobsack from Rhode Island enjoys the new magazine layout. He is upset that Tomorrow Never Dies isn't being released on the N64. He is considering buying a Sony PlayStation as a result, and wonders about US dollar pricing of games and subscriptions. David also asks about a converter for UK games, and if Nintendo are planning to release another system besides the 64DD. The magazine responds, confirming they are working on including both UK and US prices, and suggesting patience. They don't think Tomorrow Never Dies will be much good, especially compared to GoldenEye and the upcoming Perfect Dark. They also advise against using a converter, as every game comes out in the US earlier anyway. Finally, they hint that Nintendo are likely already working on a successor to the N64, noting Sega's Dreamcast and Sony's plans for the PlayStation 2. A reader asks if N64 production will cease with the 64DD release, and if the console uses two 32-bit chips. The magazine confirms the 64D is a peripheral, the N64 uses two 32-bit chips, and mentions the Time Crisis light gun. They recommend Mortal Kombat 4 as a top-tier beat-em-up. Another reader, seeking challenging games after beating several titles, is advised to try Forsaken, Banjo-Kazooie, Wipeout 64, F-Zero X, Hybrid Heaven, Shadowman, Perfect Dark, and Zelda. A final reader, praising the cheat section and wanting to compare games, is given advice on Lilat Wars, Pilot Wings 64, graphic comparisons to the PlayStation, and a Game Boy emulator. This page has a Dear Firing Line Letters section where a reader, Jonathan Bilk from Islaham, asks a few questions to the magazine. These include whether Paperboy 64 will be a hit, what the 64DD will do, if they'll bring out a PC version of Myth, The Fallen Lords, why games cost so much, how many N64 games there are, and what their favorite game is. The magazine answers, stating Paperboy 64 is dull, games cost what people are willing to pay, they don't make games, and their favorite game is GoldenEye, with the caveat of 0x, Wipeout 64, or Zelda. Below is an advertisement for Madeira Games, official supplier to Total 64, US N64, and PlayStation specialists. They stock all the latest US games, PSX DualShock analog pads, and several games like Quake 64, Mystical Ninja 64, Holy Magic Century, NBA Courtside, Deadly Arts, 1080 Snowboarding and Banjo-Kazooie. They're also import specialists for controllers, memory cards, RGB leads, and transformers. Guaranteed next-day delivery, PlayStation and games also available. They also have a Pioneer DVD, 505, Code 3 DVD player, for £499. The next page is a full-page advertisement for Logic 3 N64 peripherals, including vibration packs, memory cards, Trident pads, and a top drive wheel and pedal set. They're boasting about rumble features, memory saving, and a new level of control with the Trident pads, and highlight the top drive wheel as an award winner that guarantees accurate control and maximum comfort. This page showcases artwork sent in by young readers, competing for top prizes from Fire International. The artwork is a mix of N64-related fan art, with familiar characters like Yoshi, Mario, and Link taking center stage. Ages range from 9 to 18, hailing from places like the USA, Watford, Holland, and Norway. The prizes include an official N64 pad, jolt packs, joypad extender cables, and official N64 keychains. This page presents the high scores for various N64 games, including 1080 Degrees Snowboarding, GoldenEye 007, and Lilat Wars, Star Fox 64. In 1080 Degrees Snowboarding, Abraham Alzuman dominates, while Thomas York seems to be the GoldenEye 007 guru. Andrew Robson and Patrick Pfeffer battle it out in Lilat Wars. M. Williams is declared the overall winner for submitting high scores, with other runners-up. There's a call to action to send in your scores to become a winner with Total 64. The next page showcases the high scores for Mario Kart 64, along with Diddy Kong Racing and Snowboard Kids. The Mario Kart 64 section lists best times for each track in both UK and US regions, showing the fastest racers. Diddy Kong Racing and Snowboard Kids receive similar treatment, with the top times on various tracks. It seems like Excitement Direct is sponsoring the high scores, with the winner receiving a Mad Cat steering wheel. Send in your scores for a chance to win. This page is a full-page advert encouraging readers to subscribe to Total 64 magazine. It promises 12 copies of Total 64 for £10, alongside an image of a four-armed character, likely based on Mortal Kombat's Kintaro. There's a form to fill out with payment details to start a subscription. Warrington. The next page is a back-issue advert for Total 64 magazine. It features an image of Scorpion and Sub-Zero from Mortal Kombat facing off. The magazines on offer include issues with NFL Quarterback Club 98, Duke Nukem 64, Fighter's Destiny, and Banjo-Kazooie on the cover. It also has a form where readers can order the listed back issues and submit payment via check, postal order or credit card. This page is the front cover of PlayStation Solutions magazine. It boasts about being the world's best-selling PlayStation Tips magazine. Featured prominently is Colin McRae Rally, promising a fully mapped drive-through of the forest tracks. Also highlighted are Spice World, Alundra, Cooler World, Breath of Fire 2i, and Vigilante 8. It includes a free Premier Manager, 98 36-page coach's handbook. The cover also includes a small preview of the games included in the magazine, showcasing Colin McRae Rally, Alundra, Cooler World, Spice World, and Vigilante 8, alongside a little advert for PlayStation Out Now solutions. The next page is a next month preview for the upcoming issue of Total 64. It teases reviews for Zero X and Buck Bumble, a guide for Banjo-Kazooie, and previews of Rayman 2 and Wipeout 64. The page also features a free 32-page book on Mortal Kombat 4 which is advertised. Finally, there's a feature on Ubisoft, promising more news about their upcoming games. The page urges readers not to miss next month's issue, and asks if they have the stamina. This page is the issue's cover, featuring Mortal Kombat 4 and Mission Impossible. The editorial humorously mentions editors being taken out for meals and foreign trips, teasing exclusive reviews and previews. The page questions if the reader has the stamina for the upcoming content. This page is a full-page advert for Special Reserve, advertising Nintendo 64, Super NES, Game Boy and PlayStation games, consoles and accessories, mentioning a £6 annual membership fee and various free gifts for joining. They also offer a 10% discount and 0% finance options. Shops locations are Sawbridgeworth, Chelmsford, Nottingham, Upminster, Egham and Bristol. The next page is a full-page advertisement for Banjo-Kazooie on the Nintendo 64. The ad features the tagline, "You will believe a bear can fly." It also includes review scores and a quote calling it a brilliant game. The advert also states that the game involves flying like a bear and climbing like a bird, and describes the duo as opening a new world of tag-teaming gameplay where two heads are better than one, and states, "With a game this big you'll need all the help you can get." It closes with the claim that the Nintendo 64 is the fastest, most powerful games console on Earth.